No one can serve two masters. In today's gospel, we hear the first part of the parable of the dishonest steward. So the steward has essentially squandered his master, the rich man's property, and the rich man calls him in, and basically he's going to lose his job. So the steward kind of panics, and then he starts to collect debt, which will probably gain him some favor with his master, but also he's going to be a little bit lenient, so he's going to gain some favor with the debtors. Now, some theologians and scholars have pointed out that the steward had probably charged more than what the debt really was. So maybe in this promissory note, he's forgiving his own commission. Now, again, scholars disagree on this, but it is interesting to note because the master does ultimately affirm the steward's prudence. All right, but what are we to make of this parable? What do the readings today show us? Because again, it is the parable of the dishonest steward. He did squander his master's property, which he was in charge of protecting and growing and expanding. That was his main role as the chief steward. So I think if we go a few verses past the gospel today, we have a key verse. And that is going to be that no servant can serve two masters. You cannot serve God and mammon. And I think that's an important question for us to reflect on today is where do we spend our time and our energy? Where do we spend our wealth? Where do we put our talents and our time and our treasure? Do we focus on eternal happiness and things that are going to be good for us? Or are we often drawn to focus on wealth and possessions, foregoing, right, our relationship with the Lord? Do we spend the same amount of time and energy in growing closer to Christ as we do in other worldly positions and things that we kind of are pulled into? Where do we place our trust and our hope? What do we do with our wealth? There's a lot of questions, right, circling around based on these readings. And I think if we look at the first reading from St. Paul's letter to the Romans, we see his beautiful focus on what's important. So in the first reading from Romans 15, he's basically praising the Lord for all that God has been able to accomplish in and through him. And he wants to then continue to bring the gospel to all the people that do not know the Lord. And remember that Paul, before his conversion, was a Pharisee named Saul who was breathing murderous threats against the church. His whole entire first part that we see him in the book of Acts is he's persecuting the church. And then he has this huge conversion and he devotes his entire life to making Christ known. He began to serve God and only God. So today, as we meditate and reflect on the living word of God, let us ask ourselves, where do we put our hope and our trust? Where do we put our energy and our time and our talent? What do we focus on, right? Where is our heart this day? Because again, it is in and through Christ that we have peace and love and joy in the truest sense. So let us this day pray that our actions and our intentions and all the things that we do can ultimately serve him, his will, his plan for us, because that's going to lead to true happiness and true joy. Remember that you are loved. Please be assured of my prayers this week, and I'll see you next time. God bless.